There's a moment in every man's life where silence says more than shouting ever could. For me, it was the day I walked into my kitchen and saw my wife and daughter waiting, not with love, but with a decision they'd already made without me. My wife and me partner of 25 years looked me in the eye and said she wanted to open our marriage, and my daughter, the one I raised with steady hands and late-night stories, nodded with a kind of smug conviction. "It's not a big deal, Dad," she said. "This is what modern couples do. It's normal now." They said it like they were offering me a gift, like my role in this family had quietly expired, and no one thought I needed to be informed. I didn't cry, I didn't argue, I just listened. Because part of me broke in that moment, not from the idea of infidelity itself, but from the realization that the people I loved most no longer saw me as a man worth considering. And they had already written the next chapter of their lives. I was just a footnote. But what they didn't know was that I'd been here before, not in a kitchen, not with family, but in places where betrayal comes fast and loud and survival depends on how long you can sit still before you act. So I agreed. I smiled, and I let them believe they had won. Because when a man has nothing left to lose, he becomes someone worth fearing. This isn't a story about cheating. It's a story about what happens when trust is treated like an old piece of furniture, discarded, replaced, and sold off for something shinier. And if you've ever loved someone who forgot how to love you back, maybe you'll understand what I did next. I built a life for them. I didn't realize I was building a stage for my own betrayal. If you asked me 5 years ago what success meant, I would have said a solid roof, a steady income, a wife who smiled at you in the kitchen, a daughter who ran to hug you at the door. Nothing fancy, nothing wild. Just enough to sleep at night without wondering if you've failed the people you love. That was my idea of happiness, and I thought I had it. Her name was Scarlett. I met her in my early 20s, when I still thought love was simple, when I believed that if you just tried hard enough, gave enough, stayed loyal enough, the rest would fall into place. She was warm, quick to laugh, magnetic in that way women can be when they walk into a room and the temperature shifts. I was quiet, raised by a father who believed that stoicism was a virtue, that a man should never cry, never beg, never let his voice crack unless death was near. He built a business from dust and expected me to follow. And I did. But Scarlett, she softened me, taught me how to exhale. We married, built a home, had a daughter, Willow, named after the trees Scarlett loved most. I never thought I'd be the kind of man who sat alone in a house wondering where it all went wrong. But here we are. 25 years of marriage is no small thing. It's grocery runs and mortgage payments, birthday parties and flu seasons. It's the quiet way she'd hum while folding laundry, the scent of her shampoo on the pillow beside mine. We fought sometimes, of course we did, but we always came back to each other, or so I thought. I spent most of those years working, running the company my father started, keeping it afloat, keeping food on the table, planning for college, for retirement, for someday. I was proud of what I built, not just the business, but the family. I used to come home and see them laughing in the kitchen, mother and daughter, and I'd feel something close to peace. That kind of peace is dangerous, because when it shatters, it cuts deeper than any knife. It happened on an ordinary day, like most life-changing things do. August 27th. The sun was unforgiving that morning. My meetings ended early, and I thought, maybe I'll surprise Scarlett. Maybe we'll go out, start planning our 25th anniversary. She always loved the beach. Maybe I'd book something quiet, something just for us. I walked through the door and found them sitting at the table, Scarlett and Willow both. Too calm, too quiet. I said hello, set down my briefcase. And then my wife said, "Jonathan, please sit down." I thought someone had died. Turns out someone had me, or at least the version of me who believed this family still saw me as anything other than an obstacle. She told me she wanted change. Not divorce. Not yet. She just wanted something different. An open marriage, she said, her voice steady, like she was suggesting we try Thai food instead of Italian. My daughter chimed in, almost gleeful. "It's normal, Dad. Everyone does it. It's about freedom, about trust. Funny word that, especially when it's used to hand you a dagger. I looked at my wife, the woman I'd held in sickness, the woman I kissed under fireworks, and she said, "It's not that I'm unhappy. I'm just bored. Bored. 25 years, and all I amounted to was boredom." I didn't speak for a long time. Old habits from my ranger days. Breathe. Count. Don't let them see you flinch. So I asked, "Is there already someone?" She paused. Barely. And said his name. James. The man who owned the upscale restaurant where I'd taken clients. Shaken his hand, paid his overpriced bills, and now he was sleeping with my wife. My daughter giggled, "Mom has great taste. He's so hot." I think something inside me cracked open in that moment. Not with rage, not yet, with silence. I walked to the sink, turned on the tap, let the sound cover my thoughts. Then I turned back to them and asked, plain as day, "Is this your plan? You date other people and I stay home and clap?" Willow laughed. "You can date too, Dad. If anyone will take you, you just need an app." I should have screamed. I should have flipped the table. But all I did was nod and say, "All right, I'm in." They were stunned. Willow smirked like she'd won something. Scarlett's eyes twitched just for a second, like she wasn't sure what to do now that I hadn't exploded. They didn't realize what had just happened. They thought I'd agreed to humiliation, but I'd just agreed to war. That night, I stood at the bedroom window and watched the moon rise over the neighborhood I'd helped build with my bare hands. And I made a promise to myself. If they wanted to play games with my life, they'd learn what it felt like to lose. Quietly, permanently, without a single drop of blood, but all the devastation of a bomb. She was still in my house, but she was already gone. You'd think that after a conversation like that, your wife and daughter casually announcing they want to rip open the fabric of your marriage things would fall apart fast. But they didn't. That's the strange part. Everything just kept moving. She still made her coffee the same way in the morning, still folded the towels just right, still sat on the couch beside me during evening TV like we hadn't detonated a bomb in the middle of our living room. It was like we had silently agreed to pretend. But something had shifted. The air was different. She used to smell like lavender and old books. Now she smelled like some unfamiliar perfume. Sweet, citrusy, something new, something not mine. She didn't ask how my day was anymore. She didn't flinch when I didn't ask about hers. We stopped touching, stopped laughing. We were two people occupying the same space, but only one of us was still living there. She started spending more time on her phone, always smiling at it, tapping fast, locking it the second I got near. I didn't say a word. One night, I noticed she had downloaded a dating app, one of those discreet ones, the kind that markets itself as for couples exploring freedom. Her bio read, "Mature, elegant, and emotionally available, seeking connection, not chaos." Emotionally available. That was rich, coming from someone who hadn't looked me in the eye in days. I stared at that screen for a long time, alone in the dark hallway, while she slept soundly in our bed. Or maybe pretended to. I wasn't sure which one hurt more. Then there was Willow. At first I thought she was just siding with her mom because of age, or trend, but as days went by, her behavior changed too. She stopped eating dinner with me. I started making little digs, Hopeful Sharp, Mom's smiling again. I haven't seen her this happy in years. Or you should try dressing better if you're going to meet someone. It's a competitive world out there, Dad. I'd spent her whole childhood making sure she had what she needed, built college funds, helped her through breakups, walked her out of panic attacks at 2 a.m. Now she barely looked at me, and when she did, it was with the cold indifference of someone talking to a stranger. Sometimes, she and Scarlett would exchange glances when I spoke, like I was the punchline of a private joke I wasn't in on. I started to feel like a ghost in my own home. One evening, I came home from work and found them getting ready for a girls' weekend, Willow was packing snacks. Scarlett had a new dress I'd never seen before, tight, low-cut, designed to be seen by someone else. I asked where they were going. Scarlett smiled and said, "Just a little trip. Someplace fun. Don't wait up." Then she kissed me on the cheek, an empty gesture, cold and dry, and walked out the door. I stood in the foyer for a long time after they left, the silence echoing back everything I didn't want to believe. Over the next few weeks, the house became a rotating door. Scarlett came and went at strange hours. Sometimes she came home smelling like cigarettes, and neither of us smoked. Other times, she wouldn't come home at all. When I asked, she'd shrug. "I told you I'd be exploring." And Willow? She started posting photos with captions like, "Mom living her best life, love wins," or worse, "Proud of women who reclaim themselves. You owe no one your loyalty." That last one stayed in my chest like a nail. One morning, I noticed Scarlett had changed the lock screen on her phone to a photo of her and him, James, the man who ran the restaurant, the man who knew I existed and still sent my wife text messages like, "Can't stop thinking about last night. You looked so damn powerful walking out of my shower." I wasn't snooping. She left her phone unlocked on the counter. I saw the message while reaching for a spoon. She didn't even bother hiding it anymore. That was the day I realized something chilling. This wasn't just about sex. It wasn't about exploration. It was about erasure. She didn't want to hurt me by accident. She wanted to dismantle me on purpose, piece by piece, with a smile. A few days later, she brought home groceries and didn't get anything I liked. No black coffee, no rye bread, no peanut butter. She always remembered those three, always. When I asked about it, she said, "You're a grown man. Get your own groceries." The cruelty was in the smallness of it. Not a slap, not a scream, just the kind of sentence that makes your spine go cold. Because it's not about the bread, it's about being forgotten on purpose. I started sleeping in the guest room. She didn't protest. Willow didn't ask why. It was like they had already deleted the version of me that mattered. And maybe they had, because one night I overheard them in the hallway, whispering, laughing, and I caught one line from my daughter that made my chest go hollow. "You think he suspects anything?" Scarlett replied, "He's harmless. Just let him be." Harmless. That was the moment I stopped being heartbroken and started planning. She thought I was powerless. That was her first mistake. The night I heard them whisper in the hallway was the night I stopped being quiet. Something inside me settled, not in a fiery way, not with rage or chaos. It was colder than that, still, heavy, like a stone dropped in deep water. I didn't pace, I didn't scream. I just lay there in the dark of the guest room, watching the red digits of the clock change minute by minute, while something in my mind clicked into place. I remembered the Ranger motto I used to live by. Move unseen, strike without sound, win before the first shot is fired. I hadn't thought like that in years. I thought I had buried that man, the one who operated with precision, with purpose. Turns out, he was just sleeping. The next morning, I got up before dawn, drove to the bank. I didn't transfer everything. That would be sloppy. I just began moving small portions, first into an account she didn't know about, then into a trust I quietly named after my father. I paid the lawyer in cash. One meeting turned into 3. I asked questions I never thought I'd need the answers to. I learned the laws. I studied every clause in our prenup, every line she had probably forgotten we signed in a notary's office 25 years ago. She thought that paper was decorative. I knew better. I called in favors, people I hadn't spoken to since before Willow was born. A man I'd once helped cover rent back in '99 now ran digital security for a private firm. I asked for help, and he gave it to no questions asked. I had access to her phone records within a week. I didn't read the texts. I didn't need to. The call logs were enough. James. Every night, every lunch break, sometimes in the middle of the day when she told me she was volunteering. I tracked the hotel charges, the restaurant receipts. I made copies. I time-stamped everything. I wasn't planning revenge. Not yet. I was building a record. Quietly, methodically. The same way I used to clear a perimeter. Eyes first, gun last. She kept acting like nothing had changed. She'd breeze in and out of the house in new outfits, She laughed more, but not at anything I said. Willow would walk by me in the hallway like I was part of the furniture. I'd smile, nod, sometimes even ask how her day was just to see if she'd answer. She never did. Then one night, Scarlett came into the kitchen holding a bottle of wine and said almost playfully, "You know, we should celebrate our freedom. Maybe invite someone over, make it a real open marriage." I looked at her for a long time, then said, "You know what? I've been thinking the same thing." She raised an eyebrow. "Really? Really?" I smiled, but it wasn't the kind she was used to. She didn't notice. Or didn't care. "Anyone in mind?" she asked. "Actually, yeah," I said. "A friend from out of town. From before all this." She thought I was bluffing. She smirked, poured a second glass, and walked away. That night, I booked a dinner reservation. Not with a woman. Not with a mistress. With a lawyer. My lawyer. At his suggestion, I brought all the documents, the records, the call logs, the trust, the witness affidavits from neighbors who saw James entering and leaving our home during business hours. The pictures I never wanted to take, but needed to. A week later, I invited her family over for dinner. It was a Thursday. Casual. Lasagna in the oven, garlic bread on the table. Willow helped set the plates. Scarlett wore red. I poured wine. We sat around the table like a normal family. Her parents, her sister, even James was there. She invited him herself, said he was just a friend now, that he had helped her heal. I didn't object. Halfway through dinner, I stood up and tapped my glass. Everyone turned. I said, "Thank you all for coming. It means a lot to have family around, especially when truth is such a rare thing these days." Scarlett blinked. James shifted in his seat. Willow looked up from her phone. I pulled out the envelope. "This," I said, "is a summary of the past 8 months. Financial records, hotel receipts, phone logs, eyewitness statements, all documenting the affair between my wife and her so-called friend. And yes, Willow, before you say anything, this does affect you, because the house you live in, the car you drive, the tuition I pay for, and the groceries you mock me over are all funded by a man you no longer respect." I turned to James. "You may want to get tested. According to records from Scarlett's last visit to her gynecologist, gone she thought I didn't know about, she tested positive for an STI. Not that it matters to me anymore." The silence that followed was thicker than grief. Scarlett's face collapsed in slow motion. James pushed back from the table like it had caught fire. Willow gasped. Her hand went to her mouth. She looked at her mother, then at me, and for the first time in months, I saw something in her eyes other than pity. Fear. I looked around the table one last time and said, "This isn't about punishment. This is about clarity. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. The trust is already sealed. The house has been reassigned. The assets are protected. I've arranged my exit quietly, respectfully. You wanted freedom, now you have it. All of you. I hope it keeps you warm." When I left, no screaming, no fighting, just quiet, and the sound of everything they thought they controlled slipping through their fingers. I didn't burn it all down. I just let it all fall without holding it up anymore. After the dinner, I drove for hours. No destination, just the hum of tires and the cold hush of country roads. Somewhere past midnight, I pulled into a gas station off Route 74, bought a lukewarm coffee, and sat in the parking lot with the engine off, listening to nothing. It didn't feel like victory. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like standing in the ruins of a house you built by hand and knowing that walking away from the ashes is the only way you'll ever breathe again. I checked my phone. No calls. No messages. I wasn't expecting any. Scarlett moved out 2 days later. She didn't say goodbye. Just packed her things while I was at work and left her key on the counter. She took half the furniture and none of the silence. Willow stayed with friends, for a while at least. I didn't ask where. Didn't ask when she'd be back. She texted me once. One line. I didn't know it was that bad. I never replied, not because I didn't care, but because I did. And sometimes the most painful thing a parent can do is let a child learn the weight of consequences without softening the blow. I stayed in the house, repainted the bedroom, Tore up the guest room carpet myself, bought a second-hand couch, started cooking again, badly. But I cooked, I read more, sat on the porch during sunsets. Sometimes with a glass of whiskey, sometimes just with the silence. That was what surprised me most, how peaceful the silence became once it wasn't full of things unsaid. The lawyer finalized the paperwork, the trust held, the assets were protected. James tried to threaten legal action once, until I released a few pages of what I hadn't shown at dinner. He disappeared after that. Scarlett never contested the divorce. Turns out, when you remove the money, the attention, the house, and the audience, some people have nothing left to fight for. I saw Willow a few months later at a bookstore. She didn't notice me at first. She was laughing with a friend, carefree. Then she turned, locked eyes with me, and froze. I nodded. Just a little. Not cold, not warm. She looked like she wanted to say something, but she didn't. And that, too, was its own kind of closure. Now, when I think of love, I don't think of flowers or anniversaries or weddings. I think of loyalty, of silence shared over coffee, of being chosen again and again, even on ordinary days, especially on the hard ones. I don't hate Scarlett. I don't miss her either. I miss the version of me who still believed she'd never do what she did, but that man's gone, and in his place stands someone quieter, slower, more deliberate, someone who knows now that not all betrayals are loud, that sometimes love rots quietly behind the drywall, and by the time the structure collapses, you're too used to the creaks to even notice. But when you down when the final beam snaps and you find yourself under the wreckage, you have two choices: rebuild the same house or clear the lot and start again. I'm starting again, not with a new woman, not with a second chance, but with myself, and for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. Some people think strength means never breaking. I disagree. I think real strength is knowing exactly when to stop saving what no longer wants to be saved, to stop patching the boat after everyone else has already jumped into lifeboats of their own. Scarlett wanted freedom. I gave it to her. Willow wanted to choose sides. I didn't stop her, but I chose myself. Not out of anger, out of truth. Because at some point a man has to stop asking, why did they do this to me? And start asking, why did I let them? If this story hits you in a place you didn't expect, if you've ever loved someone who hollowed you out with a smile, tell your story in the comments. Do you think I went too far? Or did I do exactly what a man should do when his loyalty is weaponized against him? Let's talk. Let's be honest. Because the truth hurts, but pretending never heals. You've been watching Love Part Tales, where we don't tell stories to make you comfortable. We tell them to make you feel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.